Hello, beautiful humans. I'm Jen Madrone. Happy Saturday. We are moving through the list of requests that I've gotten from people of topics to cover in the videos here. So, the one that we're talking about today is about triggers because I had a couple different requests and questions that came up for people about triggers because this is a really huge subject and it's something that comes up as we move through the awakening process and as we move towards self awareness. We start to become a lot more aware of the things that trigger us, the things that elicit emotional responses and throw us off our center and really wreak havoc on the peace that we may have found. And this is definitely the less glamorous side of the awakening process because this is the grueling work. This is the deep introspection. This is where we really have to be honest with ourselves and really look deeply at our patterns and our behaviors and our responses and our shadow sides and the parts of us that we've really been avoiding for a while. And sometimes it seems like it would be so much easier to stay asleep because we have these triggers, but they're just part of us, when we're asleep. And so, we don't really notice them either way, even though they're having a strong reaction on us and our nervous system, we're just kind of immune and blind to them. And then once we start to awaken, we can no longer stay blind to them because we become more self aware and we start to see these patterns and we start to get really frustrated when we are triggered by things that we thought we have healed already, things that we thought we'd already dealt with. Or, we start to see triggers that we have no idea where they're coming from, but we seem to have emotional responses to certain situations or certain conversations or just something in our environment. And the triggers can be anywhere from very small triggers that something that we see on social media or something that a friend says, and we find ourselves kind of going back to old programming about maybe, not being good enough or, not being enough, comparing ourselves. And so those are pretty, minor triggers that really spark this destructive self talk and mental patterns. And then there are some major triggers that elicit, extreme nervous system responses. And those could be things that trigger past traumas and past events from our childhood or, anywhere up into the present moment. And it could be, seeing someone from our past at the grocery store or seeing the car that someone drove that similar that is the same car as an old partner that the relationship ended really badly. And these triggers you know can really create, they can immediately spark the nervous system and create the fight or flight response and send us into a downward spiral of feeling really shitty physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, of course. And and then there can be little triggers that we don't even notice at first, but we do notice then that like we're feeling pretty good, we're having a good day, we're pretty present, and then all of a sudden we are thrown out of the present moment. We are spiraling in our thoughts, in our mind, and we don't know what happened. And so these triggers are all gifts. They're all tools that we can use. And they're like a giant arrow that points to where we still need to do healing and we still have personal work to do. And so when we see these triggers, it is a huge opportunity to learn more about ourselves and what we need to address in our deep spiritual and emotional healing work. And so we don't want to hide from the triggers. We want to become curious about them. And we also don't want to judge our triggers. So, the two steps when we notice, well, the very first step is just beginning to notice these triggers, being really present with yourself and noticing when you have an emotional response that isn't really, directly related or seems a little bit irrational in some ways, or if we just feel a shift in our bodies. And the first step is really just noticing and watching. And then the second step would be not to judge it at all. And then the third step would be to take a step back from it. So we notice it, we don't judge it, and then we take another step back so that we're just witnessing it. We're just watching what's happening in our environment. We're watching how we're responding. And then the fourth step would be to track it, to follow it to its root, and to gain a deeper understanding of where this response is coming from and where this trigger is coming from. Because when we can track it to the root, then we can see the old limiting belief and the programming that has created that trigger. And once we've brought that into the light of day, then we have the power to change and transform it. And so this is work that takes practice. And because these responses, these triggers, these beliefs and programmings have been held for a long time in our bodies, they're very strong, and the neural pathways that support them are large. And so it takes some time to create the new neural pathways, to create the new programming, to create the new beliefs. But the more that we practice it, the more that we stay aware and we stay out of judgment and have compassion for ourselves, the faster we can change these triggers. And really having gratitude for them and gratitude for ourselves for being aware enough to see them coming, and knowing that there's some really deep healing that is ready to happen once we recognize those triggers. And so, also knowing that as we uncover them and uncover layers of trauma and layers of limiting belief, that there can be a lot of emotions that come up. And these aren't triggered emotions, these are deep emotions that have been buried. So once we start doing the work, there can be a big emotional response, and it can take a lot of our attention and energy to really shine the light on it and move through those things that have kept us in this pattern of being triggered. And so if you're getting triggered a lot and if you're noticing it, I say you're on the right path. And so, just keep watching and witnessing. And if you would like some help with this part of your work and part of your process, then please private message me and we can talk, because this is a big part of the work that I do with my clients. And it's really an important part of the transformational process. So if you have any questions, leave them here or private message me. And until then, just stay aware, stay out of judgment, and stay curious. All right, sending lots of love to you all. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the Facebook group.